City Lights on Location traveled to Los Angeles, where host Brian Linehan met with Academy Award-winning actress Julie Andrews to discuss her role in Blake Edwards' musical comedy of sexual identities, Victor Victoria. Julie Andrews talks about her Broadway successes and her film career, which has included such films as her Oscar-winning Mary Poppins, the Americanization of Emily, her first film with James Garner, The Sound of Music, 10, and S.O.B. City Lights on Location will return with Julie Andrews and a scene from Victor Victoria right after this.
City Lights on Location joins Julie Andrews. The film is Blake Edwards' Victor Victoria. It's a pleasure being with you again.
Thank you.
And having a dialogue about work and film. It's a pleasure because it always makes one's job easier to sit in front of someone, look into their eyes and say, I think you're wonderful in the film.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to have somebody say it and look into my eyes.
I always think it's the great distinction between people in newsprint journalism and television journalism. Because in television journalism, you sit in front of the person and you try to tell the truth.
Yes, but the eyes give you away, right?
Do they? You tell me.
No.
Do they?
No, in this case they don't.
I didn't mean yours or mine.
I see.
I meant other than ours.
I see. Well, sometimes they do, depending on who it is.
I like your work in Victor Victoria for a combination of reasons, and one of them is it really does offer a chance to examine on film some of the things you say about yourself in print. For example, Mary Poppins is 15 years ago, and I'm entitled to do some larking around.
Yes, I did say that.
If you ever larked around, you lark in Victor Victoria.
Yes.
I also have the feeling that Blake Edwards is telling us a lot that he has learned from personal and professional experience. Am I correct?
Yes, I think the sum of all the years is now beginning to kind of tell, and the weight of it is coming out in his films. I think 10 was very much a personal statement of Blake's, and S.O.B. certainly was, and Victor Victoria too. Yeah.
When you talk about working with Blake the way you do, and you display the kind of honesty, and you say, I enjoy working with him because it's important, I'm paraphrasing, but it's important for you to please him, and vice versa. You hope in the middle of pleasing each other that you please an audience.
Oh, yes.
But I think that there must be a particular pressure. I don't mean the cliche question about going home and discussing one's work. But there are people who feel that dramatically the finest thing you've put on film, without music and without comedy, was the Americanization of Emily, which of course you did with Arthur Hiller.
Right. Yes.
Where does Emily fit in all these years later, obviously because James Garner is reunited with you? Right. It wasn't a Blake Edwards film.
Well, it fits in my memory in a very happy place. It was a wonderful film to do. It was a fine screenplay, and written by Paddy Chayefsky. And in those days, it was made quite a while ago, but in those days it really did have something to say, and it was quite brave. It was about war heroes, how we deify, put them up on a pedestal, and how it perpetuates war. I think it was a good film for its time. I loved making it, so it sits very well in my memory.
Since I brought up a Canadian name, Arthur Hiller, without any maple leaf on my forehead. Yeah. But one of the contributing factors toward the success of Victor Victoria happens to be Paddy Stone.
Yes, another Canadian. Yes, in fact, he did a lot of the work on S.O.B. as well, and has worked with me on a number of television specials.
Did he work on the Nerea?
No, he didn't. Not on that one. That was a purely American production. I think it was Tony Sharmley worked on that with me. But, I beg your pardon, it wasn't Tony Sharmley. I'm thinking of my series.
Has your voice been as challenged, excluding concerts, and being with friends like Carol Burnett and performing on stage? Have you felt your voice as challenged as it is in Victor Victoria lately?
I'm glad you mentioned it. No, not lately. And it was grand to be able to use that low part of my voice, which so seldom sort of gets heard. I was thinking about that, talking to somebody this morning, and we were talking about the fact that on Broadway you have to use a special kind of voice, which is a very cutting, high, belting kind of voice to get across into a theater. And then films like The Sound of Music and Mary Poppins, they have a sort of high melodic tunes. And I do have a lower voice that I don't often get to use. It's very comfortable, and I love using it.
Did Blake write the scene that involved you going out with King Marchand to the opera and it happening to be Madame Butterfly and that aria because that happens to mean something to you?
Yes, he did. That's very perceptive of you. I cannot listen to Madame Butterfly singing that wonderful aria without absolutely bursting into tears. And I think Blake just knows that's part of me and used it. And in fact, we got the wonderful recording of it and played it as loud as we could in the theatre that day, and I just went.
While we are talking about recording and your voice, can you tell me why you went all the way to Nashville, got together those musicians, and recorded songs that we will never hear?
Well, I don't know why. I know why I did it. Hopefully one day you might hear a portion of it. It was an exercise for me, an experiment. Blake actually was the one who said he thought that American country songs would be very good for my voice, since actually they derived probably from England, Ireland, and many, many, many years ago, and that maybe there could be a blending of the two countries in that way. And so I did. I had a wonderful time down in Nashville, went down and, as you say, got some musicians together, and we just had fun. And it was so wonderful for me not to have the pressure of performing to an end. I did it just for myself, and some of the songs were successful, some were just awful. And I may one day go back and try and add a few more songs to the ones that were good, and who knows, maybe an album might come of it one day. I don't know.
I hope so. Not being flip, I hope so.
Thank you. That's the
because to work
part of
under
my
those,
voice too.
yes, to work under those conditions, as you say, and not have a deadline, and not have to mix and dub by Wednesday.
Yes, or to not feel that you already are thinking about what you're trying to get across. I was just doing it for fun and to see what would happen.
Beyond the fact that you have the reunion you have with James Garner
in Victor Victoria.
Yeah. Leslie Ann Warren appears in the film. And I can't imagine two artists who could meet, be brought together by a film, who could have the almost bizarre series of personal and professional happenings in their lives that would bring two people together immediately, beyond Broadway stardom as a teenager. Mm-hmm. Cinderella.
Yes, we both, she and
Disney,
I both played it, yes.
Early marriages.
Yes.
Therapy. What happened when you shook hands the first time?
Now, I can't remember when we actually, I think we met at Pinewood when the film was beginning. And it wasn't until we were some way into the film that we both said, you did Cinderella too. We both twigged at the same time. She's marvelous in the film, isn't she?
Yes, she is.
I mean, she's this wonderful brown-haired beauty, but in the film she's this dazzling, wonderful kind of Monroe blonde.
I would have said Jean Harlow,
yes.
Only because it's 34, and I know she watched old Harlow movies.
Yes, she did. Actually, it's closer to it. But she's just wonderful. And actually, what flashed in my head was when you said that we both have such similar backgrounds. It's interesting that we both arrive in that very same film in such terribly different roles, in spite of the similarity of the backgrounds.
Let us take a commercial break and have a look at a scene from Victor Victoria, and we will illustrate what we are talking around.
Sounds like a good idea.
All right.
She's a winner.
When you play me, let jazz hot, baby, you're holding my soul together. Don't know whether it's morning or night, only know it sounded right. So come on in and play me, let jazz hot, baby, 'cause I love my jazz hot.
City Lights on Location continues with Julie Andrews and our conversation about Blake Edwards' Victor Victoria. At the world premiere of Victor Victoria in Hollywood. There it was at the Los Angeles Film Exposition, dedicated to the memory of Natalie Wood.
Yes.
Many people brought together, reminiscing, as I heard last night, talking about Natalie Wood, William Holden, the sadness that you and Robert Preston are reunited in a film, and that one of the final things William Holden did in his long and distinguished career was to work with you and Blake in SOB.
Right.
I bring all of this up because Blake talks about, which he's entitled to as a third-generation man in the Hollywood film industry, talks about his early career being an actor, a writer, producer, director, and how disillusioned he became upon realizing that there could be so much greed, avarice, meanness in such a small community. And yet your response to that was, well, I wasn't there during its heyday, so I always knew it was standard operational bullshit. And I think it must be one of the secrets of your success.
That remark or that attitude?
The fact that Blake Edwards did know all of that, did experience all of that. There was a strange reaction in Hollywood, going back to being with all of you on SOB. This division of feeling that people wanted to like it, but people who lived here with permanence were apprehensive about saying, I loved it, it was wonderful and witty and true.
Well, also, I think that the point that the movie was making was it was an enormous plea for the movie industry. You know, it was saying, please pay attention to this lovely thing that we have that's being kind of picked clean in certain areas by sort of people who are only interested in how much it grosses and not putting money back into the business and so on. It's terribly complicated. I mean, it's very hard to generalize, too. You can't make sweeping statements about it, but I do know that at the top level of some of the studios, it's just a mess, and it's very, very hard to get creative control. And it's made Blake very angry, and that's what SOB is all about.
After you had the junket situation you had in Hollywood at the Beverly Hills Hotel,
yeah,
and then you all got on airplanes, and you were literally doing a city a day.
Yes.
What did you learn? What do you learn when you get on and off airplanes and you're in Chicago one day, Toronto the next, and Milwaukee on Wednesday? Or did you learn anything? Oh,
I learned some interesting things, but probably nothing earth-shattering, and probably not what you might expect. I learned, let's see if I can put this straight. We went out of love, Holden and Preston, myself, Loretta Swit, Robert Webber. We all felt that if we could help publicize SOB and tell Middle America what it was all about, because it wasn't being publicized very well, it was one of our complaints. And so we decided that we'd get on an airplane and go across America and do it. And it was a whirlwind tour. We started out very sort of, in a sort of amateur way. When Preston became, actually Holden was our sort of main speaker, and Preston was a close second. And but I became aware how hungry America is for a news item, to make news. Very quickly we became aware that if we weren't careful, we'd become this enormous cause. And actually we were just trying to tell people about the movie in a very loving way. But it eventually became, well, what is your beef with the studios? And can we publicize on this and make it a really enormous, newsworthy item? And also, along with that, since we sort of honed our performances as we went from town to town, we got very good at giving those conferences. And by the end of the tour, by the time we came back to Hollywood, we were a tight unit, and we'd really got it down pat. So there's some rubbish about all of that. It was kind of interesting. Mostly how any cause can be escalated wrongly if you're not careful. That's what I learned.
But Julie, did you lose perspective of that living in Switzerland?
I don't think you do. It's possible that you do, and I'm wrong, but, you know, sometimes it's not bad to get some distance. You could easily lose perspective by being in the very heart of something. And I know that, you know, Blake and I travel a great deal, and so coming back into London or Hollywood or wherever, you get an immediate impression, and you can feel how things have changed or where things are going. And it's very good to get away and just be quiet and live with yourself a little. For us, Switzerland is a great place to live because Hollywood can be a sort of heady experience and you can get a little carried away, and you go back to Switzerland and you really do have to live with yourself and know who you are, otherwise you go a little stir crazy and then you settle down into reality.
Can you, after the achievements and the awards, whether one talks about Oscars or Emmys or Grammys, be a performing artist who can walk into a magnificent soundstage created at the legendary Pinewood Studios and have something happen to you emotionally because you are Julie Andrews, you did all you did in England, and there you are in Pinewood, and this brilliant set has come about because of your husband's artistic standards.
Are you saying, can I remain untouched or untouched?
No, I'm saying the Julie Andrews who left England to go to New York to be on Broadway in The Boyfriend and found herself a star, thinking of performing in front of the royal family, thinking of all you did in England, and knowing what Pinewood Studios, the rank organization, and the man with the gong
Yeah, I was going to mention that, yes.
And there you are, and it's all done for Victor Victoria. It's yours, artistically.
Well, it's done now. It wasn't when we went in there. It was all to be done, and hopefully one could be worthy of all the greats that had been there before. It was quite wonderful to be in that studio, because it really is a famous English film studio. All the great, most of the great English films were made there. But actually, I mean, I do consider myself supremely fortunate. I was out to dinner the other evening with Blake and Henry Mancini and Leslie Brickus, and I looked around and I thought, my God, they're all good friends, and I'm lucky enough to have them helping to write and create a beautiful film for me. I mean, that really is a wonderful position to be in.
Have your children seen, I'm excluding Jeffrey, who worked on the film.
Yes.
And Jennifer, who was probably around and about.
Right.
Have the other children seen Victor Victoria?
Well, my daughter, my 19-year-old daughter, has. The two little ones, who are 7 and 8, would come down to the studio at Pinewood, and they would occasionally watch dailies, you know, yesterday's film clips. But actually, they haven't seen the whole film yet, no.
Is it Emma Kate who's 19 now?
Yes. Yeah. To my surprise.
I guess so.
Yeah.
I just want to say, I would like to add in this dialogue with you, that I know Blake Edwards' determination in Victor Victoria to illustrate a combination of things to us. One of the most important being that every one of us happens to be more than one person.
Yes. Yes, he did try to say that.
In the middle of the laughter, in the middle of being aware of sexual identity, self-esteem, and integrity, to have all of that in a film with production numbers, with you singing in better voice than you probably have in some time, and who knows, it may have been the trip to Nashville.
Who knows?
I think it's important to be reminded while laughing that there's more than one person in all of us, and I think that's what Blake Edwards gives us. Well, and you in Victor Victoria.
Thank you. I think Preston and James Garner and myself were certainly contributed to the film, but I really, I'm not just a loving wife saying that I do feel that it's Blake's film, that his taste and his style, his humor, the good eye that makes something beautiful visually on film is all there to see, and it's his stamp, and I think he's just wonderful, and I do think it's a good film.
I agree with you. I think it's a good film, too. Now pack and get to Canada and do the film you've been threatening to do on the Canadian lakes for 10 years.
Yes, if we don't do it soon, I'll be too old and we'll have missed our chance.
Pleasure meeting you again.
Okay, nice to see you, too.
Thank you.
Thank you.